In yesterday's class, we took the Chapter 1 test, which I'll be grading in the next day or two. So today, a new chapter. In this chapter, we'll be solving one-step equations and inequalities. But before we do, let's take a look at the properties of addition and multiplication. We'll start with the commutative property. It states that changing the order when adding and multiplying, it does not change the sum or the product. So let's look at one or two examples. When I have 4 plus 10, and if I add those together, I will get 14. And if I had 10 plus 4, reverse the order, I still have 14. So you notice that the sum did not change just because I changed the position of the addends. The same is true in multiplication. 9 times 4 is 36. And if I change the order of those two numbers and multiply 4 times 9, I'll still have a product of 36. Changing the order does not change the end result. In this third problem, I have 15, 28, and 5. So I have 15 plus 28. If I did order of operations, I'd go from left to right. But what happened in the second side, you notice that I changed the position of the 28 and the 5. I did a little commutative property right here. And the reason why I did that is because it's easier to add 15 plus 5 and then add 20 more to get 48. So we use the properties to help us to do some mental math. We don't always state that we're using it, but by connecting those numbers together in a different order, we're using the commutative property. The second property we're going to look at today is the associative property. Once again, it applies to both addition and multiplication. This one states that changing the grouping of the values when adding or multiplying, it does not change the sum or product. Once again, I put the general formula here, a plus b plus c equals a plus, and then parentheses, b plus c. It tells me in the first one, in my example, to add 48 plus 25 first, then add 5. Order of operations in the second one says let's add 25 plus 5 first. Why would I want to do that? Once again, it's an easier computation, easier for me to do mentally. And then I quickly get 78. So you see that, and the other one I could easily add, but this one I was able to do without paper and pencil. The same is true in the second problem where I have 19 times 4 times 25. Order of operations tells me to multiply 19 times 4 first. But by changing the association, which is the parentheses here, the grouping, I would now multiply the 4 and 25 first, and then times 19, and it's easier for me to do the calculation. So again, why are we using these properties? To help us to do some mental math. Our third property today, and I'm going to look at them one at a time, is the identity property. We'll look at addition first. The sum of a number, any number, and 0 is just that original number. It doesn't change its identity when I add 0 to it. 7 plus 0, still 0. Negative 4 plus 0, once again, still negative 4. We have also an identity property of multiplication. And in this one, it states that the product of any number and 1 is that original number. I take any number, let's suppose it's 15, multiply it by 1, and I still have 15. It doesn't change its identity. Negative 8 times 1, still negative 8. So let's put some of this knowledge to practice. Now that you've seen each of these properties, I want you to copy down these 5 statements as you see them, and then go ahead and state the property. You can use your notes if you need to, and we'll check them in class. Once again, I'm stating that we're using these properties to help us do mental math. Let's take a look at this problem. This has a parentheses, 81 plus 6, and then add 9. Well, what if I did the following. And can you tell me what property I just demonstrated? What changed here was positions. I switched the 81, the 81 and the 6. And then I'm still going to add 9. But that was commutative property, all right? What happens here? So in this first one, I use commutative property. Now, what happened in my second part? I now changed the grouping. I kept the order, 6, 81, 9, but this time I changed the association or the grouping. So in the second part of this, I've used the associative property. I now can easily add 81 plus 9, which gives me 90, and 90 plus 6 gives me 96. In the beginning, I could have had 81 plus 6 and had 87 and then added 9. But if we can see how numbers work well together, we can then utilize some mental math by using our properties. The distributive property, we're going to go in much greater detail in the next section, but I just wanted you to see a little sampling of it now. When I'm multiplying a number times a sum, as in the first line here, I can then take that outside term and multiply it once. That gives me a times b. I keep my operation sign plus a times c. I can also do this if I have a number multiplied by a difference. That's a subtraction. A times b minus a times c. Let's see how that looks in a problem. Prior to this, we would use order of operations if I asked you to simplify. But in this section, they're giving us another option. They're telling us, why don't we multiply 7 times 5 and then add 7 times 4. It's another way for us to simplify an expression. And then you simplify, and then you go ahead and find your final answer. Let's do one more. 8 times 6. I distribute once. I distribute twice. The key to this is remembering to do it to both terms. I now have 48 minus 24, which gives me 24. So once we learn different methods, you then have options to choose what works best for a particular problem. But when we're asking for you to demonstrate distribution, then that's the method to use. We'll do more examples in class. Before we end today's lesson, I want to leave you with some key terms. We may have talked about these prior to this, but I now want to be sure that you have the definitions to these in your notes, and we'll do the example part again in class.